Kenmore City Council is now in session pursuant to RCW 42-31-10-1I. The City Council will now enter into an executive session to discuss potential litigation. The session is slated to last for 30 minutes until approximately 7 p.m. Kenmore City Council is coming out of executive session. No action is going to be taken. So I'm adjourning the special section and as a special meeting, calling the regular meeting to order. With the clerk, please take the roll.
Councilmember Culver,
Present.
Councilmember Marshall,
Present.
Councilmember Sassen. Here. Councilmember Shrubnik. Here. Councilmember Lutzis.
Here.
Deputy Mayor O'Kane. Here. Mayor Herbig.
Here.
All present.
That brings us to the land acknowledgement. We acknowledge that the city of Kenmore is situated upon the ancestral lands of the Snohomish, Snoqualmie, Soxhawtl, Duwamish, Stillaguamish, Tulalip, Suquamish, Muckleshoot, and other tribes who are part of the Coast Salish peoples. We recognize and express our deepest respect for their enduring stewardship and profound relationship with this land, which they have cherished and protected since time immemorial. We honor the First Peoples, acknowledge their vibrant cultures, and commit ourselves to learning from their wisdom in our journey to promote justice, equity, and mutual understanding. We pledge to stand alongside these communities in acknowledging past injustices and working towards a future that respects and celebrates the diverse heritage of this land. Now, if you'd all please stand and join me in the flag salute. Unless there are any objections, the agenda will stand as published. Objections, the agenda is approved. Madam Interim City Manager, where's the fun?
Well, we're delighted to have with us tonight some of the McMaster Award winners. And I'd like to invite Mirella Alejandrino to come up to the podium and say a few words about the McMaster Award event that happened. Mirella is the president of the Kenmore Heritage Society.
Thank you for having me. The Kenmore Heritage Society just celebrated our annual McMaster's Award. It's an award that we've been giving out since 2002. So just a couple of years after the city was incorporated. And it celebrates residents in Kenmore that go above and beyond in making our community a wonderful place. This year, McMaster winner was David Baker. And I'll just read a little bit about David. David Baker has dedicated himself to making Kenmore an attractive place to live and raise a family since before Kenmore's incorporation in 1998. David was elected to the Kenmore City Council in 2004, where he served as deputy mayor for 4 years, followed by 14 years as mayor. His focus has always been on programs that support healthy, happy families. David has led or collaborated on many community enhanced projects, and over the years, Kenmore residents have recognized and appreciated David's efforts on significant accomplishments, such as establishing the senior center at Rhodey Park, working for best practices for tree maintenance, planting and preservation, getting Kenmore designated as a National Playful City, setting up the ball field at Morelands Elementary, attracting recognition in Michelle Obama's Let's Move campaign, resulting in financial support for local parks and development, adapting large land parcels for parks, as well as increasing the usability of existing parks, pursuing educational and networking opportunities via the National League of Cities for over 20 years, bringing back funding and creative ideas for moving Kenmore ahead, and representing Kenmore in Olympia and Washington, D.C., securing over $300 million in grant funding for the city. And he's also served as Kenmore's voice on the Sound Transit Board for regional transportation. So I am delighted to say that David Baker is here today. If you'd like to stand up and be recognized. Thank you, David. A few years ago, we also added another category, emerging leader, and that's to recognize someone around 18 to 23. And this year, our award winner was Emma Choi, and she was not able to be here today. She's very, very busy as a senior at Inglemoor High School. And she's dedicated herself to both school and community. She was an active member of the Honor Society, DECA, and HOSA, and she has demonstrated a strong work ethic and commitment to personal growth as ASB Executive Officer. She also academically applied herself to Inglemore's most rigorous curriculum as an IB student with a 4-point grade average. She qualified as a National Merit Commended Scholar, and she also did a ton of volunteer work, including Evergreen Hospital. So very well established, very accomplished young woman. And we're sorry she couldn't be here today. And then the last award that we did was Making a Difference in Business. And that's an award that is 2 years old. And this year, our award winner was Jason Parker. And Jason is here as well. Jason's the owner of Copperworks Distillery and Company, a key business in Kenmore's Brew Row. He's an active member of the Kenmore Business Alliance, where he's a thoughtful and cheerful presence at each meeting. He's also an ongoing participant with the Bothell Kenmore Chamber of Commerce. He was a key player in Kenmore's 2024 Oktoberfest, which was the very first year we did that, and was an advocate for the partnership of the Kenmore, and is an advocate with the Kenmore Heritage Society in the city to bring a live Hank Aaron mascot and costume to Kenmore. Jason's already taken upon himself to form a committee to plan the 2025 Oktoberfest, which is exactly the type of thing he does to make a difference, always thinking of others and getting a jump start on future work. Jason recently described his business as a community company, which says a lot about the way that he thinks about his company and his place in Kenmore. And Jason is here today as well. So we look forward to seeing all of you next year, 2026, and nominations for all of these positions usually come out in the fall. So just be thinking about who you might be able to nominate for McMaster, Emerging Leader, and Making a Difference in Business Award winner. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we want to get a picture with the council and the our McMaster Award winners? Yeah, why don't you guys come on up? Yeah, I want to thank the Heritage Society for all the work that they do to produce this award, because it really is wonderful to see community come together and celebrate community building together. And it's a fun event. And I really hope that the word gets out a little bit, gets a little, that we get more and new people coming to it, because it's a lot of fun. So thank you for everything that you do. That brings us to public comments. We want to welcome everyone to the council's meeting. We ask that folks address their comments to the mayor and the council. Folks will be given 3 minutes to speak. Please state your name and city of residence and keep within your allotted time. To make every person feel welcome here, please refrain from booing, clapping, heckling, yelling, or other interruptions. Please note, under Washington state law, public comment time may not be used to support or oppose candidates or ballot measures. Thank you for keeping your remarks focused on city business. The meeting is recorded for transparency. Again, thank you for being here and sharing your input respectfully. Clerk.
Thank you, Mayor. We have no one on site signed up for public comment and no one pre-registered for virtual public comment.
Well, then I could have saved myself 45 seconds of reading.
Apologies.
All right. That brings us to the consent agenda then. The chair would entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved. Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Seeing none. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? The consent agenda is approved unanimously. Which brings us to presentations. First item, new staff introduction, Rukia Yosef, Climate and Sustainability Intern.
Good evening, Mayor, Deputy Mayor, and City Council. Tonight, I'd like to introduce Rukia Yosef. She is our new intern. She started at the end of March. With the passing of the 2025-26 biennium budget, it allowed for some funds for a part-time intern who would be around for about 11 months. So we are fortunate enough to have Rukia starting here with us and hitting the ground running on some various program support, as well as some outreach and education. So please look out for her this summer as we're out at different events, farmers market and other community events. And we're very happy to have her here. Rukia, do you want to say anything?
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. Hi, I'm Rukia Yosef. I currently attend the University of Washington on the Seattle campus. I'm majoring in environmental science and restoration horticulture, so I'm very into the native plants and taking care of our natural wildlife. And I also have a minor in pre-law, so I'm very interested in the policy side of things. This September, I'm attending the University of San Diego for environmental engineering. And yeah, I'm very excited to work with Nina and Richard and everybody at the city of Kenmore. Finally, nice to meet you guys. Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you so much, and thank you for being here, and go dogs.
Yes, go dogs. Thank you.
Thank you. That brings us to the next presentation, King County Library System Programs, presented by Librarian and Information Services Manager Katie Boyce, Operations Manager Ben Ressler, and Regional Manager Alice Darton.
Hi, everybody. I'm Alice Darnton. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm regional manager for the Alder region with King County Library System. I oversee the 5 libraries in the Alder region, and I also supervise the management team. I'm joined tonight by 2 of those managers. We have Katie Boyce, librarian and information services manager, and Ben Ressler, operations manager for Kenmore. They'll be able to introduce themselves a little bit more once we get to their slides. I wanted to let you know that King County Library System has 50 library locations across the county, and one of them is your beloved Kenmore Library. We want you to be informed and aware of the ways that people can benefit from what libraries have to offer. To accomplish this, the library presents to city councils every year or so about how we serve people. So thank you so much for creating time on your agenda for us to present to you. Tonight, we'd like to share about library use in the past year and highlight some resources and programs you may not know about. We've also provided a handout with some local and system statistics and program information. You'll also see our new Curiosity Isn't Quiet campaign there. We can also answer any questions you have after our presentation.
Hi there. As Alice mentioned, I'm Ben Ressler. I'm the operations manager at Kenmore and have been in that role for the last 8 years. I've also been a staff member there since that building opened in 2011. As Alice also mentioned, Kenmore is one of KCLS's 50 locations throughout our county. And we're a part of a local region that includes Bothell, Lake Forest Park, Shoreline, and Richmond Beach. So we have particularly close relationships with those branches and staff that work in various combinations across all 5 of those locations. Kenmore is considered a medium-sized library within our library system, and within that category, we are a busy one. As you can see from these statistics, we had over 70,000 visits last year. We checked out over 116,000 items, and we opened over 1,500 new accounts. All those numbers are increases from the previous year. We've seen steady growth in usage ever since reopening from our pandemic shutdown in 2020 and 2021. If you're wondering what is drawing so many people to our branch, here are a few examples of some of the resources that are available to our patrons. With a KCLS card, you have full access to Consumer Reports online resources. No need for an individual subscription to research your next appliance purchase. You can read the New York Times. You can watch movies for free on 2 separate streaming services, Canopy and Hoopla. And you can read or listen to countless fiction and nonfiction titles in Libby, or gain language skills at your own pace in Mango or Rosetta Stone. And that is literally only a fraction of what's available. As I read just last week on a t-shirt of a Kenmore resident, when in doubt, go to the library. We couldn't agree more. Inside all our buildings are knowledgeable staff who are eager to help with whatever your question may be.
Hi, I'm Katie Boyes. I'm the Librarian and Information Services Manager at the Kenmore Library. I also work at Bothell and Lake Forest Park. My job is to supervise the librarians at the library and work with them on the programs that they provide. And really, library programs bring the library to life, the collection to life. And they provide an opportunity for the community to connect to the library, but also each other. And you'll see that in the programs that we are offering. We have programs for children, teens, and adults. Our story times are very popular. We have 2 story times on Friday mornings, each having about 40 to 70 participants at each one. And then we've also decided to offer an evening story time so that families that can't come during the daytime can experience story time and all the early literacy information we're offering them. Then we have 2 unique story times. One is a story time in American Sign Language, and we're only one of 2 locations in King County offering that. We recently started offering Portuguese story time. For teens, have various programs. One that I think is very neat is our LGBTQ+ youth group, and it's a partnership with Lambert House to bring a youth group for queer teens to the community. And it's a youth development organization, and it's a great resource for Kenmore. And then we have programs for adults, lots of programs for adults. We have 2 book groups. One is a cookbook group and the other is a regular book group. We also have a Second Friday Arts program for adults that's been really fun and had great attendance where people can come and just try out different arts media. We have Talk Time where people can practice their language skills. And then we have just various informational programs, like one about photography. We have one about living wills, all kinds of informational programs where people can learn more than just what they might read in a book or online. And when our libraries aren't doing programs in the library, they are getting out to the community. So our librarians visit schools, our children and teen services librarians, to promote the Otter and Sasquatch Awards. And in this program, they bring books to schools and engage classes in discussions around the books so that kids can choose a winner of these book awards. And it's a great program for developing critical thinking skills and getting kids excited about reading because they get to choose who gets the award. And then we are going to be going out to promote summer reading. We want kids to have fun choosing what they get to read over the summer and win some prizes. So Curious Creatures is the theme for this summer reading program for kids. It starts June 7th. And then we have book bingo for adults, and that starts today. So invite you down to come the Kenmore Library and get your bingo card. And if you get bingo or a blackout, you can enter a prize drawing for some great prizes. And this year, it's our first time ever partnering with Seattle Public Library on book bingo, and we're really excited about that. So you'll see our librarians out in the community promoting reading this summer at the farmers market and at the fire station pancake breakfast and other places too. Thank you.
Thanks very much. We'd be happy to answer any questions that you have for us.
Questions, Councilmember Culver?
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate this. This is awesome. I was enjoying the statistics. So I just wondered, what is the most popular library card and why is it the Sasquatch?
Great question. And I think you're right. Which of our libraries has run out of a card already? I'm trying to remember which card we ran out of.
Well, I think that Currently, the dogs camping is the running favorite.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
The Sasquatch is extremely popular, but I think that the dogs camping has beat it
The
by.
salmon, the
us
two
now.
salmon, the dogs camping, and
Mhm.
Sasquatch. have
We're
proven to
really
be the most
proud
popular.
of our new card designs. Thank you for bringing that up.
Nice, thank you.
Councilor Marshall?
You guys must already know that you do wonderful work and create happiness from very many lives. One of my most happy memories, of course, was going to the old Kenmore Library and checking out books about trolls. So happiest days of my life.
We still have those, by the way, in case you're not still in your troll era. I don't know. Oh, the dolls. That's what this is about?
Well, Councilmember Sherbrink.
Yeah, thank you. I am a semi-regular attendee and I really appreciate the library and I learned something tonight that you have Rosetta Stone. So I'm going to check that out. Thank you.
Yeah, I think one thing that you didn't mention with Hoopla at least was also the just gigantic library of comic books that are available there. My comic book store that I went to closed during the pandemic, which was very sad for me, but very good for my bank account. And Hoopla really filled a hole for me when I just wanted to read something on the bus. And I can't recommend it highly enough. And I think you just saved me another $40 because I was paying for Consumer Reports and I need to get that fixed. So wonderful resources for the public. Any other questions, comments? All right. Well, thank you so much for being here. We really appreciate everything you do. It's always fun to see you guys at the farmers market and out in the community, and the kids love it. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Next presentation is a legislative session recap presented by our state lobbyist, Shelley Helder of Gordon Thomas Honeywell.
Hello. Can you hear me okay?
Almost.
Almost. Okay. Maybe I just need to talk a little louder. Is that better?
Perfect.
Okay, great. Well, hopefully you can see the screen there as well. Good evening. I am Shelley Helder, and I've had the privilege of representing the city this past session. And I'm here this evening to provide a report on the outcomes of the 2025 legislative session. So my presentation is going to have three main components. I'm going to start with a high-level overview of the legislative session. I'm going to summarize the outcomes from the city's legislative agenda, and then I'll wrap up by talking about the next steps. So the 2025 session was the first year of the two-year legislative cycle, and it's referred to as the biennium. The first year is always 105 consecutive days. And the first year is longer because the primary purpose is to adopt the new budgets, and it takes longer to adopt the new budgets than it does to just amend the existing budgets. In addition to adopting the budgets, the legislature also introduced 2,387 bills and then ultimately passed 431 into law. And you can see on the slide that the number of bills that were introduced this year was greater than the number of bills that have been introduced in 2019 and in 2023. You'll notice I skipped 2021. That was a completely virtual session, and so I figured that data point wasn't as relevant as the other two. But despite there being more bills introduced this session, there were fewer bills that passed into law. So I just thought that was an interesting data point from this session. Any bill that did not pass into law in the first year is automatically reintroduced for consideration. So any bill that did not pass this year will be reconsidered in 2026. And within the political context, Democrats maintained strong majorities in both chambers. There was 59-39 in the House and 30-19 in the Senate. Of the 147 legislators, there were 24 freshman legislators. And that, because it was the new year of the biennium, there were new committee assignments, There were leadership changes and there were evolving policy priorities. 2025 also marked the beginning of Governor Ferguson's first term in office. So as I mentioned, the state adopted their new biennial budgets, and they have 3 budgets: the operating, the capital, and the transportation. This year's budget negotiations were uniquely difficult relative to the last several years. We entered the legislative session facing a $15 billion shortfall over 4 years. And that's one of the largest fiscal challenges that the state has faced in over a decade. The shortfall was driven by slowing revenue growth and rising caseloads. And that really influenced every discussion and put any new expenditure under increased scrutiny, and really made it so that any expenditure had to really compete in order to continue that allocation. The state operating budget is the largest of the 3 budgets. It pays for the day-to-day operations of state agencies, colleges and universities, and public schools. The primary source of funding for the operating budget is state taxes, federal funds, and tuition. When you hear about the budget in the news, the state budget in the news, the budget they're referring to is the operating budget. The budget that was just adopted, so the 25-27 operating budget, is $77.8 billion and leaves $2.3 billion in reserves. In adopting this budget, the legislature passed bills that generate $4.3 billion in new revenue, which is the largest contributor of that new revenue is an increase to the business and occupation tax for select businesses. Moving on to the capital budget. This is the budget that pays for the construction, acquisition, and maintenance of state buildings, public school buildings, higher education facilities, public lands, parks, and other assets. It is the smallest of the 3 budgets, and it's funded primarily through the sale of bonds. The new capital budget is $7.5 billion, and it leaves $349 million in bond capacity for a supplemental budget. Just for comparison purposes, the previous biennial budget was $9 billion. So this new budget is substantially smaller. The capital budget is this primary source of, or it is the source of funding for local community projects. And the amount that was allocated to that purpose in the new budget is $201 million, which is roughly $30 million less than what was allocated to that purpose in the last budget. And then just to take it a step further, the average size of the award to local community projects in this budget is $604,000, which is also a reduction relative to the previous budget, which was an average award of $800,000. So I share that just to highlight that the capital budget did not have the same level of capacity as it has had in the past. The final budget is the transportation budget. And of course, this pays for transportation activities, designing and maintaining roads, and supporting public transit. There was a $1 billion shortfall projected for the 25-27 biennium. So the transportation budget writers were faced with the option of either cutting expenditures, raising new revenue, or both. And in the end, they opted to do both. The 25-27 transportation budget is $15.5 billion. The legislature delayed the timing of projects as a method of limiting the expenditures in the near term. And they adopted legislation that generates $3.2 billion over the next 6 years. The primary source of new revenue for the transportation budget is a 6-cent gas tax. Of the amount that is increased in the gas tax, 2.5% is dedicated to counties and 2.5% is dedicated to cities. That equates to $36.2 million over the next 6 years for cities, and that's distributed proportionally on the basis of population. So with all that overview, I'm going to shift now to talking about the city's legislative priorities and outcomes. So the city had 3 priorities for this session. The first priority was a $3 million request from the capital budget towards the acquisition of Lake Point. Prior to the legislative session, we met with members of the first district delegation. So Senators Derek Stanford, Representative Davina Dewar, and Representative Shelley Klova. And we briefed each of them on the city's vision for the property. And during those meetings, we were intentional about asking for their input on what was a reasonable request to make of the legislature, given that we had already started hearing rumors about constrained budgets. At that time, it was unclear what capacity the capital budget was going to have. We knew for a while the operating budget was going to be limited, but it wasn't clear the limitations on the capital budget. And the delegation was really eager to support the city's vision. So with that awareness and the awareness that the historic average award was $800,000, the city decided to submit the request for $3 million, recognizing that the entire amount was not going to be feasible, but we still wanted to make the request. So we worked with city staff to complete the legislative form for the request to be officially submitted. And then once the form is submitted, it can be easy for legislators to shift their focus to other tasks. Very understandable, given the fast pace and the number of items they're considering during the session. So we consistently checked in with them and helped keep the city's request top of mind. Ultimately, the project did not receive any funding in the capital budget. There were 10 times the number of requests made of the local community project program this year relative to last. And budget writers were prioritizing projects that had matching funds that were time constrained, and or projects that were addressing some type of imminent threat or need. Obviously, this is a disappointing outcome. It is the first year of the biennium, and although the second year does not have the same level of investment as the first year of the biennium, there will be more opportunities in 2026. And or to continue to lay the groundwork for a competitive request in 2027. The city's second priority was a request for investment in ped bike projects, and city staff identified 5 different projects that had varying levels of funding gaps, all $1 million or less. We knew there would be limited resources in the transportation budget. So we wanted to provide kind of a menu of options for legislators to select from if there was going to be an opportunity for them. The top priority was the restoration of the funding for the 61st Avenue sidewalk project. That project was awarded $3.5 million back in 2022 when the legislature passed the Connecting Washington package. But at that time, the funding was never promised at a certain date. It was just, this money is available to Kenmore at some point. So in 2024, we asked that the state please provide the funding in the 25-27 budget. It was inadvertently removed from the budget altogether. And so coming into the 25 session, our request was for not only the funding to be restored, but for it to be allocated in the 25-27 biennium. And I'm pleased to share that we were successful in achieving this priority, despite the upcoming biennium having $1 billion shortfall, there being close to no new investments made in the biennium, and several projects being pushed out from when they had previously been promised funding in 25-27. Now their funding is pushed out. So the fact that the $3.5 million for the city is in this upcoming biennium is a significant outcome. I mentioned earlier that, well, I'll get back to that. I guess I want to highlight that this outcome would not have been possible without the first district legislators. They were really the ones that talked to the transportation budget writers and carried the water, so to speak, on that outcome. So definitely want to make sure they're recognized for that. The third and final priority was a $2.7 million operating budget request for a digital permitting system upgrade. And this request was made in collaboration with other eCity Gov Alliance jurisdictions. Due to the size of this request, 2.7 million, we did extensive outreach and education with legislators, all of whom, everyone we met with was supportive of the concept. It was difficult because it was such a tight budget year, difficult to have legislators prioritize this request when they were only given one operating budget request each. We were very fortunate to have two champions in the House, Representative Dewar and Representative Amy Wallen from Kirkland, really carried the banner for this. In the Senate, our champion was Senator Adrian Cortez from Clark County. And we were intentional about choosing a champion from different regions of the state to demonstrate the broad benefit for the state investment. Unfortunately, the budget realities made this request unfeasible for this biennium. There was no funding included in either the House nor the Senate proposed operating budgets. And our efforts to request an amendment to the budgets were not successful. Again, a really discouraging outcome, especially considering the amount of time and energy that went into advancing this priority. And the executive director of the eCity Gov Alliance, Tyler Running Deer, spent hours working with me to advance this request and really represented the organization well. And I'm confident that if not for the challenging budget realities, that this priority would have a different outcome. In addition to the city's top three priorities, you all also have a policy statements document, and that guides my engagement in Olympia on your behalf. I'm not going to review the outcomes of every item in that policy statement document. I'm going to highlight a few, and I'll just say within your council packet, there is a wealth of information, perhaps too much information, but I've attempted to break it into separate documents so that you can go to the document and look for the information that is hopefully most interesting to you. The first item I want to cover is the passage of House Bill 1024, which changes the leasing lengths for the lodge at St. Edward State Park from 62 years, which is current law, to 80 years. And this brings this park in alignment with all other state park properties. This was a change that was supported by the lodge, the State Parks and Recreation Commission, as well as the city. Representative Kloba introduced the House bill, and Senator Stanford introduced the Senate bill. Both bills passed their chamber of origin unanimously, and ultimately the House bill passed the legislature. The governor signed the bill, and it takes effect July 27th. So the longer lease length is a really important change to support the long-term success of the lodge. The second item worth mentioning is the passage of House Bill 1791, which provides flexibility for the use of real estate excise taxes. Historically, there's been restrictions on how REIT 1 and REIT 2 revenues can be used. Only REIT 2 can be used towards affordable housing towards an affordable housing project within the city limits. And then only REIT 1 could be used towards limited maintenance purposes. And there's several other criteria that make it like a game of gymnastics to use REIT revenues. The bill aligns REIT 1 and REIT 2 so that they can be used for interchangeably. So if there's an eligible use for REIT 1, REIT 2 can be used and vice versa. The bill also makes changes to allow REIT to be used towards regional affordable housing projects, such as those that are organized by ARCH, even if the facility is not located in the city of Kenmore. Before this, the facility had to be in city limits in order for you to use REIT revenue towards it. And then finally, the effort to raise the 1% cap on property tax growth looked more promising than ever before, and fizzled out in the final days of the session. The governor shared concerns over the policy, and that caused legislators who were already on the fence to move to a definitive no. Obviously, the policy outcome did not change, but really as a city, what we've been looking for is fiscal sustainability, more resources, more tools in the toolbox. And the legislature did pass House Bill 2015, which is councilmanic 0.1% sales tax to be used for criminal justice purposes. So again, not a change to the property tax tool, but a small new tool for other purposes. So now that session is over, you may ask what comes next. The first thing that I encourage the city to consider is how you might thank your state legislators for the time that they've devoted to the legislative session. That time is a sacrifice. Legislators put their life on hold for the legislative session. And just expressing appreciation, however you choose to do that, it goes a long way. Based on what passed the legislature, there will be some implementation required by the city. And so that's just something to keep in mind. City staff will have some implementation work to do. And more than ever, it is really critical for anyone who receives state funding to use that funding within the biennium, to obligate the funds that have been awarded, because as we saw this year, and I think we'll continue to see in the next several years as budgets are still constrained, if money is not being used, it's being pulled back and devoted to other purposes. And we don't want to end up using our political capital to simply keep the money we have. We want to use it in order to get other money for other projects. So the funds for the 61st Avenue project are a really good example of there's a way that those dollars can be spent, expended, obligated within the biennium. I would really encourage the city to try to figure out how to do that so we don't have to keep fighting to keep them. And then over the interim months, we develop an action plan, which just outlines the key steps to take in preparation for the 2026 session, which is going to be here before we know it. Since this was a long session, it's a short interim. It's a non-election year for the legislature, but there are 9 legislative races that will be special elections in on the ballot in the fall. And with that, I just want to thank you for your time and attention this evening, and also appreciate your engagement throughout the legislative session. Really, our success over the years is because of the partnership that we have. Mayor Herbig and Interim City Manager Lukash came to Olympia for meetings with the city's legislators during session. And that's a significant commitment of time, but I think is always a valuable investment. And Mayor Herbig was available at a moment's notice to testify in support of the city's priorities. And city staff were prompt in responding and reviewing legislation that could potentially impact the city. So just want to recognize that and say, without that, this partnership wouldn't be so successful. So thank you.
Questions? Councilmember Marshall.
Not at all a question, but a thank you, Shelley, for your brilliant advocacy, and especially with the Viking saga of the 61st Street improvements and stream improvements for sidewalks. It has a triumphant ending, despite its twists and turns like the sagas. The ending is going to be triumphant. It's an equity question. It's going to make life better for so many people who live in a lot of multifamily complexes right there along 61st and the environment. So, and it's personally something I'm very much invested in. And then also thank you to Shelley Kloba and Davina Durr I heard they rode their bikes personally to observe the conditions of the sidewalk some years ago. So that's brilliant. It's awesome. I can't say enough about it. Thank you.
Councilor Lutsis.
Yeah, thank you very, very much, Shelley. We're grateful to have you helping advocate for our needs down in Olympia. One question I did have, I know that we chatted a couple of months ago, and I kind of wanted to follow up on that, was with budget constraints, were there any impacts on some of the revenues that cities receive? You know, for instance, excise taxes that normally we receive any sort of impacts financially that the state decided to hold back this year?
That's a great question, Councilmember Lutsis. The short answer is no. There were no reductions in state shared revenues. The caveat that I will offer is the Criminal Justice Training Commission provides the Basic Law Enforcement Academy. And in the last budget cycle, the legislature took on the responsibility of paying for 100% of the training for new officers. And in this budget, they revert back to only paying for 75%, which means that the city is on the hook for that 25% again. So no change to the revenues that the state is sharing, but kind of a backdoor increased cost.
Thank you very much.
Councilor McCulver.
Thank you. Shelley, I had expressed I wasn't sure about a couple of those. I wasn't sure about Lake Point. I wasn't sure about the digital permitting stuff. We can see it didn't come through. Obviously, you don't have a crystal ball and don't mean to put you too on the spot, but just in terms of going forward next year, like, do you think those are worth bringing back? Is that part of a future planning session to gain that out of it? Do you have any early impressions on, you know, are we going to be in a similar place in a year if we try to bring those back again? Any early thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's a great question. I'll start with the digital permitting request first. I think because we don't expect the budget to have any increase, the operating budget to have any increased capacity in a supplemental year, I don't know that it makes much sense to bring that one back in 2026. Normally, I would say, you know, being consistent and persistent is an effective strategy. I just think with the current budget situation, I don't know that I would advise the city to retain that as a priority. When it comes to Lake Point, I think that's worthy of further conversation. I think part of it is dependent on the progress being made at with you all at the city council and at the county. And part of it is dependent on what's happening at the state level. We know that the bond capacity is going to be, there's only 349 million left in bond capacity for a supplemental budget. So that's going to be a relatively small amount that's dedicated towards the local community project account. So I think we'll need to be creative depending on what the need is and what the timing of that need is for Lake Point.
Got it. And just to summarize, the sort of takeaway for this year, they didn't really see the urgency. They didn't see, this doesn't seem imminent. This doesn't seem to rise to the top of the priority list. But that's basically the gist, right?
I would say relative to the other projects that they had in front of them, that's a fair summary.
Okay, cool. Thank you so much. I appreciate this.
Any other questions? All right, I'm not seeing any. So thank you so much for joining us tonight, Shelley. Thank you for all of your hard work. We really appreciate it. And we'll be seeing you sooner than we think for next year.
Thank you.
Thank you. That brings us to our business agenda. First item, Kenmore Electric Vehicle Infrastructure Plan presented by Climate Action Plan Program Manager Nina Rasmussen and Environmental Services Director Richard Sawyer.
Good evening again, Mayor, Deputy Mayor, City Council. We are here tonight to present the Electric Vehicle Infrastructure Plan, or EVIP. We are also joined online by our consultant, Nick Conti, from Accenture, and he will be taking us through a lot of the process for putting together this plan. But I will start us off here. Let Nick go into it once we get there. So just to give you an idea of what we will be talking about tonight, we will be going into the purpose and background of this project, some of the stakeholder and community engagement that was performed in order to develop this work, touch a little bit on the EV modeling methodology, and then go into the recommendations for community charging, as well as fleet charging and general next steps in the short term and longer term. So as you are all aware, transportation is a large piece of our emissions profile. It's about 23% of our emissions in Kenmore coming from on-road vehicles. There are many different avenues in which we can tackle this. So the electrification of vehicles on our roads is one such action. So this plan aims to strategize how we can place chargers for public use. That way we can meet the demand that we're seeing, as well as prepare for regulations that are coming from the state as far as the sale of electric vehicles and limiting the sale of combustion engines. So we are wanting to make sure that we are providing enough infrastructure for our community and those who are passing through in order to charge their vehicles as needed. This plan aims to support the CAP by supporting the strategy number 3 under our transportation and land use section, and that is to drive cleaner vehicles. So this is an effort to bring that to the forefront for our emissions reductions goals. So for in putting this plan together, this is essentially acting as a roadmap for us to do charger installs within the community through 2040, essentially. And this is taking into account various criteria, including community input into where chargers might go, where people typically congregate, as well as electrical hosting capacity. We want to make sure that PSC is able to provide the power that is needed and will be needed in the future for this huge electrical demand. In addition, we're also looking at proximity to other chargers, making sure that any sort of charging deserts are taken care of, and those who don't have dedicated charging at their homes might be able to access that publicly. And then, of course, what kind of usage or traffic these chargers might get. We want something that will be highly utilized, that will be, worth our investment for providing this to the community. So that was the sort of larger section of this plan. The other piece of it was to conduct a fleet transition plan for the city in order to fully electrify the city's vehicles, taking into account planned replacements and additions to our fleet as we continue to grow and add services. With that, I will hand it over to Nick to go into our community engagement.
Thank you very much, Nina. Good evening, council members. I hope you can all hear me well. As Nina said, my name is Nick Conti. I am a senior director with Accenture and spearhead our clean mobility, energy, and sustainability team here in the Pacific Northwest. So really excited to be here in front of you all, virtually at least, to discuss and review our EV infrastructure plan and some of the data that we came up with. So first, wanted to start with really the community charging and speaking to our stakeholder and community engagement, what we did and how we did it. So had a really diverse set of engagement methodologies. Really, our first one was sitting down with Nina and team, the rest of the city staff, and specifically with the diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility committee members, speaking to charging priorities, vehicles, and really getting a firm understanding of kind of where the city sits today and where the city would like to go. Nina highlighted that really 2050 overarching goal of carbon neutrality and how this plan can support the city in achieving those goals. We then worked and had an in-person community engagement event actually in the council chambers there the last October. We then had multiple virtual community engagement events where we had webinars and really overviewed our process to gather feedback. The map that you see to the right of the screen, this was accompanied by a survey. and a GIS mapping tool that was hosted directly on the City of Kenmore's website for residents to be able to go in and drop a pin location to desired locations for charging infrastructure based on their needs and where they see it most needed in the city. And as Nina mentioned too, a really close collaboration with PSE that allowed us to get access to their spatial and GIS data to review their grid capacity and make sure that any recommendations for charging locations were closely aligned with available power and really utility capacity there. So some key findings that we really came out of with the community engagement. Really lack of awareness about EV incentives. A lot of education was done in these, and a lot of focus was given towards available funding and incentives, both on the local, but also the state and federal level, understanding what funding mechanisms are out there that we could use and pull down. Really that culminated in kind of a clear, more accessible public education on those EV benefits, which we hope this plan continues to support and continues to support the city in that education. And in terms of identifying locations, we did our technical team, which I am supported by a large technical team here, grouped these locations based on the geospatial data and based on some of this GIS mapping. That just under half of the desired charging locations from the community were found in commercial parking lots, with just over a third at curbside locations, and then about 20% split between residential areas and gas stations. And so as part of this plan, community engagement is the city has done a fantastic job of doing it, and our recommendation here is to continue doing that, continue focusing on reaching out to the underserved communities, the hard to reach populations, the multifamily housing units that maybe don't have dedicated parking spaces or available charging equipment at home, and to really help bridge that gap. Really to continue incorporating those inputs into any planning and planning as we continue to advance the EVIP. And prioritize concerns around safety, vehicle safety, charger safety, equitable access to those charging locations, and again, increasing that awareness of those financial incentives. And just on this next slide here, we're going to see a flow chart, a flow diagram here. So everything here in purple is an input. These are publicly available, sometimes privately need a subscription to go in and work with these partners, with the U.S. Census data, with NREL, with EIA to go in, take all of these inputs, bring it into a proprietary software. That software then helps us forecast EV adoption in the city of Kenmore. This uses a vehicle stock, it uses turnover model, and essentially it helps us forecast the amount of vehicles that we'll need and the year that we'll need them, along with the charging capacity that they need based on the projected vehicle growth in Kenmore, aligning that with the population growth in Kenmore. And so the next slide here, we'll dive a bit deeper into some of the numbers and chargers. So just a quick refresher here. There are really three types of chargers. There's a DC fast charger, there's an L2 charger, and an L1 charger. Starting with the DC fast chargers, these are rapid chargers as the name suggests, but really they can charge a vehicle anywhere between 20 and 45 minutes, bringing that vehicle to about 80% charging capacity, which is typically what the manufacturers recommend for that vehicle battery and longevity. An L2 charger is typically between 4 and 10 hours. So these we see more in curbside locations or in single family homes or at workplace charging, where we can either take advantage of off-peak or off-demand charging rates, i.e. we can plug our vehicle and it can charge overnight, whereas a DCFC is more seen in a gas station or potentially quicker turnover areas along highways that we need a quick charge to get where we need to go. And all the way down here at the bottom is the L1 charger. That is typically you plug in a standard, 120 volt outlet, and takes significant time, anywhere from two to 3 days really to charge that vehicle. That is for a drip charge, slow, generally overnight, to get you a couple miles of commuting in and around town. Prices do vary here. Typically an L1 charger can be sourced for under $500 if it doesn't already come with the vehicle. L2, anywhere between 1,000 to 5,000, depending on the size, capacity, and shipping and install costs. And then DC fast charger, significantly more, anywhere from 10 to really hundreds of thousands of dollars if you're talking about a DC fast charger and multiple DC fast chargers with that power and infrastructure, which is generally where we see some of the costs needing to upgrade service time. On the graph here, we have our pro rata and our cost optimized solution. Think of our pro rata solution as really the base case. This is where we are forecasting demand and growth on vehicle density and population at a pretty standard regular rate. Then we take that and we cost optimize that. So that's where we're looking to minimize the cost while meeting demand, while the pro rata is based on optimizing for the current population and the current vehicle density, ignoring relative costs. So when we're able to cost optimize and kind of match those two numbers up, we're able to save about 3.7 million over the 15 years between those two solutions there. And on the next page here, we're going to look at the internal City of Kenmore's fleet. So as we sit today, we're at about 27 vehicles. As part of this transition, we are forecasting that the internal City of Kenmore fleet will be able to be fully electric by 2039. One important thing to note here that you'll see on the bottom of the slide, we are projecting that roughly based on population growth and resources for the City of Kenmore, about a new vehicle every year. So that takes us from where we sit today at about 27 vehicles to where we're forecasting roughly 4 to 2 vehicles by 2040. So that is an important distinction here. We are assuming that as population grows, as demand grows, so will the requirements of the City of Kenmore's internal fleet will grow to meet that. So we are projecting that demand. We're able to see with the orange come fully orange to 2039. So those are electric vehicles. We still have some hybrids coming out until late 2028, and along with our ICE internal combustion engines fully phasing out by 2038. On the next slide here, we take a peek at some of the costs that we're expecting to incur over these 40 years into that transition of the City of Kenmore's fleet. We see this spike here in 2025 this year. That is due to a recommendation to replace a street sweeper, which is a very expensive piece of equipment. The reason we're recommending, one, coming up on its natural replacement cycle, but two, there are available incentives to help offset some of those costs. Significant incentives are available this year, and as we go down the lines, as we maybe saw from some of the previous sessions, that those incentives are not guaranteed, and so our recommendations are really to take advantage of incentives while they're available to the City of Kenmore. And the next slide here will cover we'll dive a bit more into the fuel and energy costs. So the green lines that we see there at the top, that is BAU, business as usual. So the green straight line, no dashes here, shows no growth in the City of Kenmore's fleet. This is assuming 27 vehicles all the way up until 2040. And those fuel and energy costs, the green dash line shows an increase in fleet size that we saw on the previous slides, how that increases in expenditures and operations and maintenance. And then the blue line and the kind of peach color line assumes the fuel and energy costs with transition of fleet growth and no fleet growth. So both significantly dropping off to save us about 113,000 with no fleet growth versus 147 with fleet growth of savings between operations and maintenance between now and 2040. And Nina, if we jump to the next slide here, we really worked to try to segment. This is a lot of information. It's a very dense packet. We sent, it's a very dense report. There's a lot of critical information here. And so we wanted to make sure that we could separate the immediate next steps, aligning with your budget cycles from 2025 to 2026. And then we look at 2026 to 2030. So within the next 18 or so months, as we're quickly approaching June here, we are recommending a deployment of 17 L2 chargers and 4 DCFC chargers along Kenmore Central Corridor. So this is, again, for the community charging, public-facing charging, recommending a total of 21 chargers for the next 18 months or so. Again, continuing with the community engagement, continuing with the engagement with the business and private community to understand where partnerships we can leverage and where we can place these chargers. Not all of them are going to be able to be on city-owned property, so there are going to be have to be opportunities to work with partners here to house some of those charging equipments and sites. As I briefly touched on earlier, again, leveraging incentives while they're available. Puget Sound PSE has numerous programs out that are still available for workplace charging, for public charging, as well as PSE's pole charging program, which is another great opportunity to add a lot of those L2 chargers along some of those utility poles here. A recommendation, if we're able to, along with depending on some of those partnerships that we hopefully are able to foster and leverage, is installing separate meters for EV charging. That way they're enabled to access special EV utility rates, generally discounted towards regular commercial rates. And then again, continuing to coordinate with PSE throughout these next critical months to understand their funding availability and timing and deployment of funds. So that is for the community charging. On this next page here, we focus on the fleet transition. So understanding that the Public Works Operations Center is currently being built, we recommend at least 3 dual pole chargers be installed there for a total of 6 charging ports. But would love to leverage the full 6 dual port chargers for a total of 12 charging ports. In terms of accounting for future growth, designed for an additional 7 dual port chargers, bringing the total to 26, and hopefully be able to pre-wire for 2010 kilowatt AC charging ports. This will help with cost effectiveness down the line, having the infrastructure and power be put in as we're designing construction today, so we don't have to go rip up any asphalt or replace utilities down the line. Again, PSE leveraging local funds from PSE with their up and go electric fleet that will allow the city to bridge that gap and be able to install 1 to 2 DC FCs chargers in support of the city's fleet. And then between now and the end of 2026, there's a recommendation to replace 3 of the existing vehicles, which are in your council packets of those exact vehicles and their recommended replacements in terms of their EV equivalents. And Nina, the next slide here focuses on identifying key partnership sites. So the graphic to the right here with those kind of red dots identify potential sites within the city that have available capacity according to the PSE's geospatial data and have a number of support from the community engagement survey where these were desirable charging locations. And so we have categorized those and taken sample projects from multifamily residential, from public parks, schools and educational, community and religious sites, along with retail and service centers and transit and mobility hubs. We've taken a few of those areas and highlighted what type of charger type is best suited for that location. So this is not an exhaustive list. This is an example set of potential partnership sites that would be for immediate consideration for adding charging infrastructure there. And so the next slide here shows we can think of this really as a heat map to help identify sites based on the grid capacity, based it on demand growth of the city, and really helping outlay optimal locations based on use case. And really what this is going to help us do is identify areas to help reduce the barrier to adoption, reduce the barrier to folks that may not have the opportunity or access to at-home charging. A robust public charging network is really required to help bridge that barrier to adoption. And so here we have a maximum of 82 L2 chargers installed by 2030. That's our goal here. And then this next slide will talk through a very similar heat map, but this one looks at DCFC chargers. So less demand there in the central corridor. And we're recommending anywhere between 10 to 18 DCFC chargers installed by 2030. And then these next slides here highlight really 27 to 2030 next steps for community charging. So again, highlighting those dual port and DCFC and L2 chargers, but also considering making updates to building code and policy recommendations to align closer to some of our neighbors with Seattle, Tacoma, King County, building off of the 2018 Washington State Energy Code, going above and beyond those code requirements. Financial incentives with the great project that Solarize Kenmore has doing. So recommending a similar type of rebate program, not for solar panels, but for charging infrastructure and prioritizing these anywhere near transit hubs and other general high demand areas. Workforce development, so working with partners like UW Bothell and other K through 12 schools in the area to help develop EV infrastructure training programs. Again, coordinating with PSC to leverage their grant programs, to leverage their funding and incentives that are available for their programs. Continuing with the community engagement, continuing that open line of communication, and then really being able to leverage long-term partnerships with community members and businesses and organizations within the city of Kenmore. We can also look at potentially offloading some of the operations and maintenance risk over via a public-private partnership, or allowing a charging as a service type of contract structure for some of these chargers that will help alleviate some of that risk and resource requirement within the city to offload that to a private vendor. And then opportunities to create incentive models, hopefully to attract retails and service providers to install their own chargers with the city of Kenmore for public use. And then the final slide here really talks through the 27 to 2030 fleet transition for the internal fleet. So we have 3 vehicles being replaced from 2025 to 2026, another 6 vehicles being replaced from 27 to 2030. And again, it's aligning this report with long-term land use strategies, broader economic development initiatives and opportunities, and continuing with that vehicle replacement until we're able to fully electrify in 2039 and 2040. And I believe that brings me to the conclusion of this presentation. So appreciate the engagement, appreciate Nina's team and the whole city for all of their dedication and going above and beyond with addressing questions and being available for us, and really have been a fantastic partner, and really excited with this plan and looking forward to addressing any questions that I can. Thank you all.
Questions, Councilmember Culver.
Thank you. This is awesome. This is a lot. One of your early slides about the sweeper and the incentive, and basically implying that some of the incentives could go away at any time. I didn't see it or I might have missed it if you said it. Is that federal or is that Washington state?
It's a combination. Right now, it's predominantly state and local that we have focused on. We made a bit of a pivot at the end of last year to remove a lot of federal funding given this. So it's a lot of state and local funding, but a very good question.
Sure. Yeah, right on. For no particular reason, can golf carts use these and plug in and charge?
Depending on the golf cart, in theory, yes, they would be able to use those.
Cool. That's all I got. Thank you.
Of course.
Councilmember Sasson.
Thanks so much, Nick. I believe I've shared this reflection before, but I would love to see partnering with North Shore School Districts, specifically around Inglemoor High School. I know that may fall in the school district's budget rather than the city's budget, but we are raising the most climate conscious generation yet. And I would very much, and I didn't see any units on the map allocated to Inglemoor High School, which is right off Simons Road. Looked like Moreland's the playground at Moreland's was the closest, clearly, city-owned location. But as we move forward, some coordination with North Shore, because Inglemoor's high school is undergoing a massive renovation. And if there were the possibility of providing these units in partnership, I would be in favor. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Councilor Lucis.
Yes, thank you very much. Very in-depth report, so I appreciate that. One question I had was there much discussion about resiliency, specifically when it comes to the more physical infrastructure side of things? I think most notably, some recent events bring that to mind, not only weather-related resiliency to EV charging infrastructure, but also potentially theft or human-caused damage to these sorts of facilities, and whether that was considered, taken into account for with some of this planning, or just, any thoughts around that? Thank you.
Absolutely, and it's a really good point. It's one that unfortunately is out of a lot of our controls in terms of that vandalism and harming of those units. We have given consideration for that, and partly in safety, and also working with vendors to understand what they are doing. A lot of problems with copper theft and cutting of cables, and so one of our partners and vendors, ChargePoint, is actually developing a new cable that can be retrofitted that has heat sensors within the cables and a steel cable throughout the middle. So once there's pressure and it starts to heat up, it will send off essentially like a car alarm and send it off to the units to help prevent some of that vandalism and theft really of that. So it was given, there is a section in the report that in the broader report didn't quite make this executive summary, but it does have a section on safety, vandalism, and steps that we can take to try to minimize that.
Thank you very much.
I will also note on a related aspect to that, one of the recommendations that Nick and his team have included in the full report is to make sure that we do have an operations and repair contract so that these chargers are reliable to the community. I know we've had concerns with the small number of chargers that we do have, and that sometimes they go out of service and there's sort of an unknown as to when those will come back up. So that is something that we are keeping in mind as we start implementing.
Thank you very much.
Councilmember Shrubnik.
Yeah, this was a great report, very dense with information, tons of information, which was fantastic. And I really appreciate the clarification on how long it takes to charge with a DC fast charger versus the L2s. So yeah, and that's helpful to think about those different timeframes in terms of the locations as well. So I appreciate that. I also have questions about the vendor, and is there, I assume there's some choices in who we have as a vendor. I mean, I'm just gonna, say the elephant in the room. I mean, can we choose not to, for example, have Tesla chargers? Is that a thing?
There are many companies that would love for you not to choose Tesla chargers there. They have a lot of competition out there, and there are definitely a lot of vendors that could meet the city's needs.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, I'm not seeing any. Thank you so much for the presentation. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll say there's one of our new vehicles we've already replaced sitting down in the garage. If you want to see our new, we've got a Ford F-150 that's fully electric
That's
sitting
Lightning?
down there. And it's down in the garage. Take a look at it on your way out.
All right. That brings us to our public hearing today. Proposed resolution 25-428, 2026 to 2031 Transportation Improvement Plan presented by Engineering Director John Vicente.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. I will be presenting the 6-year Transportation Improvement Program for 2026, 2031, and I will try and make this as quick as possible. So for tonight, of course, reviewing the TIP, we'll be looking at new projects. I'll be giving you a summary of the 2024 improvements. There is a public hearing required for this, and then a recommendation to adopt Resolution 25-428. General background, you've heard this every year from me. The RCW requires that we create a transportation improvement program. We need to update it every single year. It needs to be done by the end of June of every year. The TIP must show how we propose to use transportation-related funds in the ensuing 6 years. It needs to be consistent with our comprehensive plan. It has to align with our complete streets policy. It's a planning document, so it's not fiscally restrained. So whatever you approve today doesn't mean you're beholden to the numbers in that document. A public hearing is required prior to approval. The TIP needs to be filed with the Secretary of Transportation with the state. And then local funds utilized are based upon the approved CIP and not based upon the TIP here. So within the current proposed TIP, we have 20 projects that are being carried over from 2025 to 2030. There's a long list there. I won't go through all of them, but I will make a few comments. When Shelley was talking about the budget and that no new projects were being awarded, that did not include grant projects. So they are still providing funding for transportation projects through a competitive process. And so through this process, we are tentatively being awarded funds for project number 13, the 155th Street Sidewalk, 84th to 87th. Project 15, 155th project from 81st to 84th. And where is it? In project 16, 175th Ped Bike project from 68th to 73rd. They have been sending me documentation to begin the process to obligate those funds as soon as possible. As Shelley said, get it done, get it quick, get it over. So those are the 3 projects that I've been told we're tentatively going to be seeing funds. It just depends on what the final transportation budget looks like, and I haven't heard anything yet about what that is. So, so you can see all the fund numbers up there. One project was removed, the 80th Avenue Corridor project, the 192nd to city limits. I removed it because it was just too big of a project to scope out. I tried to get grant funds for it, and boy, I did not get that money. So can't win everything. So what I did was I reduced the size of the project, and it'll just be added as we start building up the corridor. Doesn't mean I can't keep applying for grant funds. I just figured, take it out and be more realistic. So of course, this is from 192nd to the city limits was removed. And so what I added was 80th Avenue from 185th to 192nd. So taking off where our current project ends and taking it to 192nd. I've also added the 66th Avenue 196 Slope Stability Project up there in the northern center part of the city. And I'll be going through each one of those projects here right now. So the 80th Avenue Ped Bike Project on 185th, 192nd is just adding sidewalks on the east side of the road, buffered bike lanes on both sides, looking at some intersection treatments, potentially evaluating for a roundabout at 192nd, and possible raised crosswalks or some other kind of crossing treatments at 190th and where the Tolt Trail crosses at 185th approximately. So where the power lines are going through. And then, this is not advancing. Oh, there we go. The 66th Avenue Northeast 196 Slope Project, we've got a slow-moving failure on 166. You can see the cracks in the pavement. It's slowly been moving for the last 10, 15 years. We finally did a final analysis, got some cost estimating, and we've put it into the CIP. So it is currently in the CIP to be taken care of in the next couple of years. So as part of our Complete Streets policy, I have to report what we've done in 2024. 2024, we did 1,040 lineal feet of new bike lanes and 620 lineal feet of new sidewalk. Numbers a little low this year because we're in the process of designing everything. Those numbers will spike up in 2026. With that, we have our public hearing.
Do we have any questions before we open the public hearing? Councilmember Sassen.
I do have a question because I live off of 155th. Can you just clarify, are we replacing the existing stretch of sidewalk that's, I'm trying to think, is it the north side of the street, or are we adding sidewalk on the side of 155th that has no sidewalk?
So the proposal on 155th from 81st to 84th would be new sidewalk on the south side of the street, going along the houses in the church there, and then bike lanes on both sides of the street. The 155th sidewalk from 84th to Simons would be filling in the gaps. So on the north side, extending the sidewalk from mid-block to 84th, and then on the south side, filling in the gap of sidewalk from, I don't even know what street that is, like 87th, going to the west.
Okay, that is very exciting because, you know, as those of us know, it's the main throughway to get to access Inglemoor, and there's no sidewalk. So I'm grateful.
And we are starting design on the 84th project here at the end of this year. So there'll be sidewalks on both sides of the street from 155th to 150th. So yeah, a lot of great stuff going on around Morelands.
Any other questions before we open up the public hearing? Yeah, I just wanted to emphasize, I know I brought this up before, but 80th in particular is there's just so much speeding there. There's a lot of residential on both sides. There's a lot of potential for people to be able to walk if they felt safe along that street. And I hope that we'll continue our work north because especially folks coming south down, you know, from Meridian, from Bothell coming south. Going downhill, people are getting up speed. There's not a huge shoulder for folks that do have to walk down there, and it doesn't feel particularly safe. So I hope that we continue that work up 80th and build an 80th that people can actually feel safe on that aren't in cars. So yeah, thank you. Anything further? All right. Well, with that, then I will declare the public hearing open. Before reading the spiel, I just want to find out from the clerk, do we have anybody signed up virtually or in person for the public hearing?
Thank you, Mayor. We have no individual signed up for public hearing on site or pre-registered virtually.
Okay, I'll just double check with the folks in the audience. Is anybody here to speak on the public hearing? The Transportation Improvement Plan. All right, not seeing anybody signed up for that and not hearing anybody signed up for it, I'm going to declare the public hearing closed. And we will move to the business agenda item, the same piece, proposed resolution 24, 428, 2026, 2031 Transportation Improvement Plan. Anything further, Mr. Vicente?
Nothing further.
Okay, do we have any further questions before we move to approval? Councilmember Shrubnik.
And just remind us the relationship of this to the local road safety plan.
So the local road safety plan looks at safety improvements that we can do throughout the city. It's looking more at smaller type projects. It may identify larger projects. And when it identifies those larger projects, we then would add it to the tip of the CIP. So there is a connection, but the transportation improvement plan is looking at projects where we're actually using transportation dollars and not CAPE dollars. So that's really the big difference.
Any other questions? Okay, seeing none, the chair would entertain a motion to approve proposed resolution number 25-428, 2026 to 2031 Transportation Improvement Program.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, would the clerk please take the roll?
On the motion to adopt the proposed resolution number 25-428, the 2026 to 2031 Transportation Improvement Program, Councilmember Shrubnik,
Yes.
Councilmember Marshall,
Yes.
Councilmember Culver,
Yes.
Councilmember Lutsis,
Yes.
Councilmember Sassen,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor O'Kane,
Yes.
Mayor Herbig.
Yes, the motion is passed unanimously. Thank you very much. Next up, we have staff report, bicycle and pedestrian facilities web map update presented by traffic engineering intern Zeke Cohn and GIS intern Neil Hicks and our traffic engineer Tobin Bennett Gold and GIS analyst Amanda Larson.
Hello, good evening, Mayor and Council, and today we're going to be telling you about the bike and pedestrian facilities map that has been created. The scope of this map is that it includes roads with a classification of collector or higher as defined in the Kenmore Road Standards. Here you can see a map of the city of Kenmore and the road classifications. We have included 5 levels of bicycle facilities that correspond to the Puget Sound Regional Council bike facility inventory types. The first level, level 0, is no facility, which means that there is no dedicated bike facility and no symbolization. However, this doesn't necessarily mean that the road is unsafe for bikes. We have many neighborhood streets that have low volumes and low speeds, which can still be very bikeable even without the bike infrastructure added to them. Level 1 is shared lane markings. These are markings in car lanes indicating that bikes are expected to mix with motor vehicle traffic, as is shown here on 68th Avenue, right by City Hall. These are primarily wayfinding. Bikes are always allowed to use the lane unless they're specifically prohibited to, and so this is more so to indicate to bikes when there is perhaps a gap between different facilities so that they know where they can be in order to find their way back to those. Level 2 is bike lanes with no buffers. These are when we have marked lanes on the road, but there is no buffer between the bikes and the cars besides the marked lane, as is shown in the top picture on 73rd Avenue. Level 3 is bike lanes with buffers, which are marked lanes that also have a marked buffer between the bikes and the cars. These can both be found on 73rd Avenue. Level 4 is protected bike lanes, which are bike lanes with physical barriers to separate them from vehicle traffic, such as curbs or grade separation, as the above picture shows an example of this in Seattle. There are currently no protected bike lanes on the map, but the map is designed to be easy to update so that as our bike facilities expand, we can add them to it very easily. There are some bike lanes on 73rd Avenue that have some protected sections right before and after intersections, but primarily that lane is marked as buffered and unbuffered bike lanes. And currently there are some there are some protected bike lanes being considered for the 80th Avenue plan, which is in design. Level 5, the top level, is multi-use paths, which are completely separated from the road. These are used by both cyclists and pedestrians and includes the Burt-Gilman Trail, the Tolt Pipeline, and the West Sammamish Bridge Path. Some things that were not included in the bike facilities part of the map are shoulders, crossing and turning facilities, such as the bike box shown here at 170th and Juanita Drive, and sidewalks or walking paths. While bicyclists often do ride in shoulders and
and in sidewalks or on walking paths. Because those are not meant specifically for bikes to be on, like we cannot guarantee that a shoulder is going to be clear for bikes to ride in. We did not include them on this map. Other information included in the map includes the speed limits on different roads, other transportation facilities like sidewalks and shoulders included separately, downtown points of interest such as Kenmore City Hall and the Kenmore Library, and other bike-related facilities such as bus stops, parks, and bike racks. Internally, the underlying assets that were used to create this map will be very helpful in analyzing safety and connectivity, which will support updates to our local road safety plan. This map and the assets also will serve as a historical record of our bike facilities as they expand, so we can see how they've changed over time, and will facilitate outreach about pedestrian and bike mobility in the city. The info that's connected to the info is connected to data tables, and these can be updated as the facilities expand. The bike map will be automatically updated when those tables are updated. So expanding it as we get more bike facilities will be very quick.
Thanks, Zeke. My name is Neil. I'm the GIS intern, and next I'm going to walk you through the application and the maps and what you can expect to see in them. So starting off, when you open up the map, you can see a quick information page that lets people know what they can expect from the map and an idea of the city's goal to improve infrastructure. So in the sidebar, you have a choice of how you want the application to open. I chose to open it on the legend. And in the legend, you can see bike racks, speed limits, bike facilities, and parks. And I'm going to be saying this throughout this presentation, but after this was submitted, I continued working on the application. So there's going to be some differences, and now you can see the bus stops visible. So the next on the sidebar is the riding rules. So these are rules and laws that people need to follow through as they ride their bike through the city. I also provided a link to Cascade Bicycle Club, which is just an excellent resource in general for bikers of every level. And this link in particular goes straight to their beginner tips for biking section. So in the layers section, I put a number of layers that this is what it will look like when you first open it, and you can toggle these on and off. And I will point out that we did say earlier that shoulders and sidewalks aren't included. They're initially turned off, which is where the confusion comes from there. So as you toggle these features on and off, we have points of interest, which I have created a filter that you'll see later so that it only shows what we assume are the most important points that people want to see. A shoulders and a sidewalks layer. Next. So in the route filters, this helps you filter layers. So you can turn these filters on and off to find routes that are good for your needs. So you can see all the facilities available. You can see the just multi-use paths that are like the Burke-Gilman and the bridge, and then roads with bike lanes, and that just helps people get around the city in a way that they feel most comfortable. So here I provided a link and a QR code, so if you would like to see what it looks like, because as I said, I have continued to work on the app after this was created, so it looks a little cleaner and it's a little more functional, and I tried to do some updates so that as people use it, it's clearer. For example, I had like bus stops turned off until you zoomed in, but I thought that people might not even look for that if it's not initially visible. So we can go to next. So as you click through and see how this works, if you did it on your phone, it has a different format, but it has all the same information, and you can click on features such as bus stops, and it informs you of the route and the road that that feature is on. Some other functions, you can share this map, you can export it, and I did set up a language changer. It changes to Spanish. It's not fully functional, just how the app works. It will change the words on the app to Spanish, but to make the map in Spanish, I would have to make a second map that's in Spanish and embed that in the app. And then there's some other issues with how the app would know to switch between maps as the language was switched. You can also go back to the information page and zoom to your location and search your address. Are there any questions about this?
Questions? Councilmember Culver?
Thank you. Just appreciation. Heck yes, GIS. You love to see it. Appreciate you all.
Councilmember Lucis?
Yeah, thank you so much. This is great. One question I did have is I love the QR code. I think that's great. And I'm curious how that's being promoted publicly.
We actually made a little, a bike map that you like fold up, and we actually used that, a trial run of that at the Bike Everywhere Day that we did with King County. And so it's kind of all folded up and you can unfold it and it's a full page map. And on the other side, it has bike laws and helmet reminders and things like that. It was just printed on our printers upstairs, so it's not like profesh, but
No, that's perfectly fine. The only reason I love the QR code. I want it to be, you know, out there for the public to be able to scan rather than trying to go through meeting minutes and
right.
find the QR.
Also, this app will be shared on our GIS hub on our main landing page, so you'll be able to get to it from there.
And that's awesome. And then maybe just a note to staff too, as I know we were talking about wayfinding signage. Maybe we could incorporate a QR code to that on some of our wayfinding signage around the city.
Sorry. No. I just also wanted to add to that, that I'm also, like, I bike a lot, and I noticed that Bothell Ski and Bike, they have like their own little pamphlets and maps that they hand out. So I was planning to drop off what we made with them so that they can hand it out.
Thank you.
Councilmember Shrubnik?
Yeah, there are several bike places. That's one. But
Yeah,
Lake
okay.
Forest Park and Bothell also have bike shops. And I've also, I mean, QR code everywhere in our parks along the trail, 192. I mean, everywhere. This is fantastic. It's a great use of GIS and it's a fantastic tool. It's fantastic. I just can't express that enough. One small thing, I find the sidewalk piece a little hard to discern, and I don't know whether that can, I don't know, a little bolder
I can
or
easily make
or
that, thicker,
color
yeah.
or something. But everything else is really clear, easy to use, just terrific.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Deputy Mayor?
Yeah, just a real thank you for the outstanding work on this. And I recall the meeting when this came up, and I can't recall exactly who brought it up. I think it is, but I'm not going to give credit to them by name because I don't want to get it wrong. Thank you for really encouraging moving on this, because this is an outstanding tool for our community. It's really great seeing it come to fruition. So thank you for your efforts. Great presentation today. I'm really looking forward to our community being able to use this. I also see this as potential Kenmore top 4 or something in our newsletters going out. I'm assuming that's probably in progress, but thought I'd say that out loud. Thank you.
Councilor Shrubnik, did I see your hand?
Yeah, sorry, I forgot one comment. I remember bringing this up and it was equally about informing the public, but also informing our planning processes to be able to visually see where do we have gaps and opportunities. So, and I think it does that as well. And, you know, it is striking, to Councilmember Marshall's point many times, how little sidewalk we actually have in the city. I mean, we're cranking away at our major roads for bike paths, but yeah, so much opportunity.
Any other questions or comments? Yeah, I want to thank you for the work. I think this is really informative. One thing that popped up that I noticed during the presentation, that we might want to think about fixing. I noticed we didn't have any bike racks at Taquadis, which seems kind of wild considering the Burke Gilman is right there. Might be something we think about in the future, but it was helpful to, I don't think I would have realized that because I would walk there if I'm normally going to go there without actually looking at this map and not seeing that called out there. So this is super useful, and I think it's going to be really helpful as we plan for the future. So thank you.
And those bike racks are being updated as it comes along, because I live right next to Talavades, and I'm pretty sure there are bike racks there.
I mean, there might be.
So-
It might, just didn't see it on the map.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
have not ever biked there because I walk when I'm going there. So anyway, thank you. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much. Other staff report, interim city manager.
I just want to point out, we really value our interns, and you can see the kind of work that they do. Thank you to Zeke and Neil for all of your terrific work, and Tobin and Amanda for helping guide them, and it's really fantastic. A city of our size, we rely on all kinds of different talented folks on our team, including interns. And it's summer, so I met a bunch of new interns. We have just today at our staff meeting, and so we bring in lots of interns in the summer, and so excited to have them on board. I also wanted to thank the Kenmore Heritage Society and the McMaster Award winners, just really important part of our community, and so glad that one of them stayed for the whole meeting, so we appreciate that. And the president of the KHS. And then just lastly, just want to thank the council for a very productive retreat on Saturday, and looking forward to taking next steps to carry out your direction following the retreat. And that's all I have.
All right, that brings us to council member reports and comments. Councilmember Culver.
Thank you. I've been reading 7 Habits, which is an excellent resource, and I decided to try running a draft of my comments tonight through ChatGPT and asked it to rephrase my remarks in ways that emphasize points from 7 Habits. It's a good practice, right? I had to skip a lot, but a few things. At last year's Leavenworth retreat, in the spirit of being proactive, staying aligned with principle-centered leadership, and seeking first to understand, I voiced concern multiple times about removing financial sustainability from our council's list of top priorities. For transparency, that discussion is publicly available day 2 at the 5-hour, 13-minute mark, just before we moved into priority setting exercise. Quote, I need a check-in from my colleagues because I feel like I keep circling the airport on this. I feel some compulsion to add a priority that better spells out the financial path of the city. We took FSP out, and they're going to have some recommendations, which we're going to adopt some of those. We're going to not adopt some of those. But I'm guessing that conversation isn't going to be wrapped by the end of 2024. So do we want to add a priority that better speaks to tackling that financial piece more specifically? The response at the time was a polite no. I was happy to yield, and we moved on. Now, a year later, I see that financial sustainability has risen to the top of the priorities. I take this not as a personal victory, but as a meaningful evolution in our shared understanding. Sometimes there's a lag between raising a concern and reaching a broad consensus. I don't mind being early in raising a point if it helps us arrive at better clarity and alignment going forward. So with that, I want to genuinely welcome my colleagues to what appears to be an emerging consensus, one I believe strengthens our collective direction. Let me also close with a couple of familiar sign-offs, 7 Habits style. In alignment with our shared commitment to human dignity, self-determination, and peaceful resolution of conflict, and as part of a principled stance on human rights and justice for all, I would like to express my solidarity and support of a future in which Palestinians are free to live in safety with full rights, sovereignty, and self-determination. Wishing everyone a joyous and purposeful Monday.
Councilmember Marshall.
Nothing to report.
Councilmember Sassen.
This is going to sound a little bit like a rehash from our interim city manager, but I wrote them down before you said them, so here we go. I too feel like we had a very effective council retreat this weekend, and I really credit that to the preparation of the staff and the interim city manager, and also just the productivity, the spirit of productivity of the council. It was a very positive day. And then my second point, of course, is I very much enjoyed the participation of our interns. in this particular meeting, and I look forward to getting to know them, throughout the summer. It's delightful to have your freshness and your expertise, and I'm glad you're here. So thank you.
Councilmember Shepnick.
Yeah, it was a great retreat, and it's I'm glad that our seventh council member is in concurrence. He's definitely missed, even though there was an opportunity for Zoom. We didn't have his participation, so but it's great that we're all in alignment. So I do have, I'd love to bring up a couple of council rule adjustments. I thought we had one on attendance, and I've been scouring this and not finding it. I think we had talked about attending all meetings unless ill or unless the council member has sought and received approval from the body to be excused. And I think we talked about 3 unexcused absences within 12 months. But I'm not seeing that in the council rules, so that would be one. And then the other is just attire. We've heard this many times, that it's, it feels respectful when people in the audience see us as treating our position professionally. And so I would suggest something like council members adhering to business professional or business casual for all meetings with the exception of retreats. So those would be, if we wanted to get traction on those would be my asks.
Oh, I'm not hearing a second, so.
Oh, I didn't know that the motion.
Oh, yeah,
was made.
were you making an ask for a second for discussion? It's a
Future meeting.
No, it's a second to have a discussion, and then we either need a consensus or we need a majority to put on the future agenda. Okay, so is there a second to the council rule changes that Councilmember Shubneck is proposing?
Second.
All right, we have a second for discussion. I will defer to the maker of the motion first, and then we'll go down the line. So Councilmember Shubneck, you want to speak to your motion? No? Okay, Councilmember Culver, then Councilmember Marshall.
I appreciate the opportunity. I had prepared remarks on this, so I will read them now. My colleagues, I regret that I wasn't able to attend the retreat on Saturday. I've learned there were some questions about my absence, and I appreciate everyone's understanding. In the spirit of mutual respect and trust, I hope we can continue to honor each other's boundaries, especially when someone expresses a personal need, such as stepping back due to illness, as was the case with mine, or other legitimate concerns. Let's model the kind of empathy and professionalism that builds healthy, high-trust team. Courtesy is contagious in Kenmore.
Councilor Marshall.
Yeah, and I apologize, Councilmember Shrebnick. There was a motion or an interest in putting down some standards as to attire, right? Casual, business casual or something like that. Okay. All right. Well, and my thought on that is I would be reluctant to make any such standards. I respect the idea, but I think we're going to have to be ultimately accountable to our citizens. It's going to be what they think, how we think we treat the job professionally, unprofessionally, or gradations that they'll make us accountable. I'm comfortable enough with that. Thank you.
Comments? Deputy Mayor?
Yeah, I was surprised. I had actually was curious about the absences in our council rules and was surprised that we didn't have anything documented there. I do recall talking about it as a council several years ago. So I think it would be good. I do think it's also important for us to be respectful due to illness and other things that may come up in people's lives that could be unexpected. But I think then noting in our council rules would be important. On attire, I think Council Member Marshall brings up a good point. I would be hesitant to write in rules on how council members should dress.
Councilmember Lutzis.
Yes, just briefly to the point about attendance. You know, I have been sick myself and have, you know, sought grace for that instance, but, you know, it is few and far between. And there, on the flip side of that, you know, I think that it's very understandable when there are certain extenuating circumstances that we should grant grace and leniency. But also at the same time, if it becomes a habit, we do, the rest of us as a council, you know, depend on our colleagues here to be able to get business done. And so when there, you know, if it becomes a habit beyond simply illness or other extenuating circumstances, that can negatively impact our ability to conduct our business that we need to conduct. We need all of our members here. You know, and so I think there are instances in which, you know, it's not ideal to have a 6-member body. And so if it is, you know, every once in a while, that's understandable too. But, you know, being clear and upfront about there is an expectation. Again, this is council member rules and policies. This is our expectation for one another that when possible, we would very strongly encourage one another to show up and be present on behalf of our colleagues as well. So.
Councilmember Shrubnik.
Yeah, and sorry, I probably said it very quickly. It was, thank you. Council members will attend all meetings unless ill or unless the council member has sought and received approval from the body to be excused. And yes, and I've certainly used being excused, and I think we've all been sick. So yes, we totally understand that. But meetings do include things like, you know, our informal meetings that are posted with our other cities and, you know, various things like that. They're not all just these meetings from the dais. So yeah, so I appreciate that. And I too thought it was already enshrined, and I'm just not seeing it. So I'm just raising it because we had extensive discussions about it a few years ago.
I believe that was around actually an RCW that was being cited a couple years ago. I don't think it was actually in our council rules. I think there was a part of the Washington State Code that talks about that, about 3 consecutive unexcused absences is what I think it discusses. Okay. Councilmember Sassen, then Councilmember Marshall.
I just want to be certain that we are including Zoom participation as full participation.
Yeah, of course. Councilmember Marshall and Councilmember Culver.
Thanks for a reminder on the RCW. I'd forgotten that. And if that's there, I'm comfortable with that being the sole guidance or the sole structure about that issue. I think beyond it, again, I feel that we're going to be held accountable by our citizens.
Councilmember Culver.
Thank you. And just for transparency, I sent to Nigel and interim city manager Stephanie Lukash and Mr. Mike Pendleton. Hi, folks. I woke up not feeling well. I don't think I have retreat in me, so I'm going to miss today, but I hope it's productive. Sounds like it was. Glad that concern got addressed. I think I also sent one, maybe a text or something. I let Mayor Herbig know that I wasn't going to attend the 5:30 Shoreline meeting, but was there later for 7 once I was feeling better. So appreciate everyone's concern.
Deputy Mayor.
Yeah, I think it would be good at a minimum to add the RCW for reference in our council rules. Just so that we have a frame of reference that's documented in a place that we all look and use on a regular basis.
Yeah, and that's 35A 12060. The one that is in our rules is not the right one.
Okay. So I'm not seeing consensus around, and correct if I'm wrong, but I'm not seeing any consensus around attire. I am seeing, are there any objections to us having, adding to the agenda, folding in the RCW around consecutive absences into our code, just so it's into our council rules, just so it's clear for folks? Councilmember Culver?
I do, but I would volley if the process of writing into you or whoever, I don't feel well, I'm not going to be attending. If we need to clarify that, or if I should just write into CI Council next time, I'm happy to, but code change feels too heavy for me.
Yeah, I do. I mean, yeah, we probably should clarify exactly who gets notified if somebody's gonna be missing a meeting. I would suggest the mayor and the clerks at the minimum, and probably the city manager. But, so we have one objection. Does anybody else object to adding that, to having a discussion about adding that, the RCW to the code, to the council, rules, Deputy Mayor?
Yeah, I think it would be great if it was just added to a consent agenda, or if we were able to just consider this conversation here tonight enough. I'd rather not have to bring it back for discussion, but I'm okay with it if we do, but I feel like we've gone through it and there's reason to add reference, and I would say the RCW number and what it says in the council rules for ease of reference.
City Attorney has a comment?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just to clarify, if the council's direction is to revise their rules, it would be, would need to be by an adoption of a resolution to amend your rules.
Right, and I think what the deputy mayor was asking is, could we just, assuming that there is consensus here, could we add that to directly to a consent agenda?
Yes, the resolution could be put on the consent agenda, but I'm sorry, I misheard her. I thought it was just this discussion and then it would be.
Yeah.
Thank you.
No, of course not. Are there any other objections to adding this change to a future consent agenda? I understand Councilor, okay, Councilor Marshall and Councilor Culver.
The change is just adding the existing RCW.
Just
to-
pointing the
Yep,
RCW,
No
yeah.
objection.
Councilor Culver,
I object, so I'll be pulling it from consent.
okay. We're free to pull it from consent if it is added to consent. Any further discussion? Councilor Marshall?
This is a silly question here, but for the city attorney, if it's in the RCW, it certainly binds us now, whether we adopt it or not. Is that right?
That is state law, so that
Okay.
would be correct.
Okay, thank you.
I think the purpose would be, I mean, not all of us read the RCWs about being a council member, but hopefully we all read the council rules and procedures at a minimum. So at least there, we would see that. Because that was new to me when somebody brought that up a couple years ago. Is there any other objections? Councilor Culver?
Last point, obviously, if we do wind up changing these, we can just change these when the new council takes seat, right?
I'm sorry, when the council does what?
When the new council takes seat in January, in 5 or 6 months.
Okay. I am seeing consensus -1 for adding this to upcoming consent agenda. So can we make that happen? All right. Anything further, Councilor Shrubnik? Councilor Luzis?
Yes, a couple of things. I won't rehash, but thank you for the retreat. Congratulations to those recognized by the Kenmore Heritage Society. One thing I did want to bring up, though, was I was looking through our council committee list, and I noticed that there was a vacancy for an alternate position, and I would like to put my name in for that if possible, since it appears it's been vacant for a year now.
Which committee was that?
As an alternate for the Regional Crisis Response Principals Aid Assembly.
Okay. I didn't realize we had an opening there. Who's you are, okay.
Councilmember Shrubnik's yeah.
Are there any objections to Councilor Luzis being the alternate to Councilmember Shrubnik on the RCR? Okay. I think we're good on that front then. Thank you.
Thank you. That's all.
Anything further? Okay. Deputy Mayor?
I just really want to say I'm grateful for a productive retreat on Saturday. And I'm just going to add the importance of each of our voices when we're determining our priorities is incredibly important. And that's it is so important that each council member attend retreats so long as they're able. I recognize, someone may be sick and not able to attend, but the voice on our priorities, each of us are elected to serve our community and present, our values, what we see as most important for the city of Kenmore. Each of our voices matter, and they are missed when they're not there. Thank you.
Yeah, not much to add. The retreat was really productive. I appreciated hearing from everybody. Councilor Lutz just made a comment earlier about decisions being made with 6 people, and we actually did run into one problem with that, where we had a tie on one of our priorities. It wasn't one of the top 5, but we did have a tie. Yeah, that we couldn't break because it came down to 3-3. But it was productive, and it's always a pleasure to work with all of you and set those goals and direction for the city. So nothing more to come before us. The Kenmore City Council is adjourned.